Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Rob, for moderating for my session this morning. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And as Justin said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are coming and joining us from. This is actually my first time in a combi for Data Weekender, so I'm actually looking forward to presenting to you and taking you on a little bit of a journey and introducing you to GitHub Copilot in Azure Data Studio. So for those of you who go over here, I think for those of you who don't know me, my name's Warwick Rudd. I'm a data platform MVP. The most important, that came up very quickly, the most important parts about this intro slide are my contact details. So feel free to reach out to me to ask me any questions about this session or anything across the data platform. So yes, I still am an avid snowboarder, but I don't get there as often. And as you can tell by my grayness, I'm getting much, much older. So what are we here to talk about? So here's the abstract. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to read this abstract, and that's why you've come to this session and not one of the other sessions that's happening right now. If this is not the right session, I won't be offended. You still do have time to jump into one of those other sessions. But what I want to do, and I'm not going to go through the abstract, but I do want to take you through a little bit of a journey and point out how GitHub Copilot and Azure Data Studio is like Maverick and Iceman in being perfect partners in the sky. So what we're going to have a look at is how you're able to utilize Azure Data Studio and GitHub Copilot to make you be better at your job, be more efficient at your job, and become even bigger rock stars with using these in doing what you do on a day-to-day basis. Now, what I am going to be covering, you can see down the bottom here that I'll be having a look at and taking you through 3 different languages. There are more languages than this that it can be used with. What I do want to call out straight from the get-go, because of the explosion with AI, okay, now, I'm assuming I'll just chop over to the chat window so that I can see that as well. So if anybody does have any questions, you can put them in there. If you can preface them with a capital Q, that makes it easy for Rob to be able to track those, and it makes it easy for me to also come back and see. Now, as I was saying, with the explosion of AI, give me a bit of a hands up, and those of you who have tried ChatGTP. Yep, we've got a couple of people. Yep, we've got some thumbs up, etc. Excellent. So some people are starting to utilize the AI side of things. Now, what I do want to call out straight from the get-go with GitHub Copilot, it is different to ChatGTP, okay? The experience that you get with ChatGTP in the whatever your browser of choice is very different to what we're going to be seeing here. Not only that, but even if you take GitHub Copilot and you use it in VS Code, or inside of Visual Studio itself, right? Your experiences are going to be slightly different, okay? So because Visual Studio was the first platform that GitHub Copilot was released on, excuse me, it's further along and more advanced than what we have in Azure Data Studio. So Justin's got a weird obsession trying to get ChatGPT to get very good. Okay, so what are we going to be looking at? As I mentioned, we're going to be using Azure Data Studio, and for those of you who may not already be using Azure Data Studio, the beauty of it, it came about with the release of SQL Server 2017 for the sole purpose of we then got SQL Server on Linux. So with that, Azure Data Studio allows us to do everything that we need to do, whether we're working on a Mac OS, Linux, or Windows, okay? And like we'll see, we're able to use this on multiple languages, all inside of that single IDE. And now I've been using Azure Data Studio right from before it was actually called Azure Data Studio, back when it was still in pre-release, and it's evolved immensely. And the beauty with the extensions is what makes this so good, and how we're able to use it for what we do. Now, given it it's based on extensions, that's also what we need to have in place for us to be able to use GitHub Copilot. Now, with this, what is GitHub Copilot? Well, it's a AI-paired programmer that can assist you. Okay, so I'm assuming nearly everybody in this session today has used IntelliSense. Okay, whether that be from a vendor product like Redgate to what's built into Management Studio and Azure Data Studio to assist us with that programming that we're working with. GitHub Copilot takes that even more. Okay, we get code completions. Now, yes, that sounds like IntelliSense, but it gives us a whole lot more, and we'll see the difference between just the IntelliSense and what that code completion actually gives us. From that, we can also have a look at, we can get multiple suggestions for what we're trying to achieve, as well as we can get entire code snippets. Now, GitHub Copilot was developed by Microsoft in conjunction with OpenAI, and it can assist in your code development so that therefore you can be more productive in what you are doing day to day, but also assist you in learning something new. You know, as data professionals, that's something that we all should be looking at, in that we need to evolve and develop as technology changes. So I started off as a infrastructure DBA many years ago. We then got virtualization, we got containerization, we got cloud, and things have just evolved. Okay, so we need to be able to keep up with that. And this is where I think that, and this is just my impression or my thoughts only, but this is where I feel GitHub Copilot is where it will come into its own for if you're a newcomer coming into a data platform and wanting to learn something, or you're an experienced person working in the data platform environment and you're needing to learn something new. And that's where we'll have a look at 3 different languages as part of today's session. Now, what it can do for you, or if you're wanting to find out more information, okay, you can go here to Getting Started with GitHub Copilot. It has got information for you about what it does, how you can get started, etc. Okay. What I do want to make you aware of is that GitHub Copilot does not, now let me repeat that, does not interrogate your database. Okay, so while in the upcoming demos, we will be inside of Azure Data Studio, we will be connected to a database, but GitHub Copilot does not interrogate your database. It does not know anything about your database. Okay, so it works in the context of what you're working in inside of Azure Data Studio. And when we get to the demo, I'll explain that a little bit more. So if you have a number of windows open, then that's inside the context, as well as what it knows about is all of the publicly accessible code that it was trained on. Okay, now because it has been trained, for it to even get released into the product, it's been trained on billions of lines of code. Okay, and we will see that in the demo that some of the recommendations, because of the database that I am using, and it is a demo database, you will see some of those recommendations are publicly known recommendations, and they may not fit for what we're trying to do, but I'll take you through how you're able to change that. For you to get started with GitHub Copilot, you will need a GitHub Copilot account. Now, that is different to a GitHub account. Now, you can start off with a free 30-day trial account, at which time you then need to move to a paid account. For an individual, you can do $10 a month, cancel at any time, or if you want to save yourself $20, you can pay for a year up front, and it's $100. Or you can have a business account, and that's $19 a month per user. Now, I did mention that we're going to be using 3 languages, and because nearly everybody here, I'm making the assumption, is a data professional of some form, given that there are so many different streams that we work in, that you know T-SQL and that you work with T-SQL probably on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so we're going to be looking at how GitHub Copilot can assist us from the T-SQL point of view. PowerShell, if you haven't already started using PowerShell, there's lots of different benefits for you to gain and make your job easier with using PowerShell. And Python. Do we have anybody or any data scientists or any app devs in the session that are using Python? Me personally, my extent of Python is putting together the demos for this session. So that's where I'll be able to show you. This is where I was saying just before that if you're wanting to learn something new, GitHub Copilot is a fantastic starting place for you to be able to more easily learn something new and be more productive with what your day-to-day. Now, Henrik has said Python light user with help from ChatGPT. Okay, so nice. That is a way that you can also learn. But as I said, we're just here to look at GitHub Copilot specific for Azure Data Studio. And the reason why I wanted to call that out is because the first time I actually presented this, and it was an in-person event, the conversation, and that's what hopefully as we're going through this, if you're thinking of how you could possibly use this in your job, right? What I'm hoping for you to get out of this session is that you start thinking about how can I use this in my day-to-day activities and what are some of the benefits that it might bring to us. So we've got a Python light user for extracting data from API endpoints. Nice. Well, you're well ahead of me, Bob, so that's awesome. So with that, let's dive in and have a look at what we're here to talk about. So Azure Data Studio. Now, is the font on Azure Data Studio, is that okay for everybody? I can make it bigger if people want, just give me the thumbs up and we can adjust that to make it easier for yourselves. Now, I will change this, but for those of you who aren't using Azure Data Studio on a frequent basis, I like it, especially for presentation sessions like this, as opposed to Management Studio. I'm easily able to scale up and scale down the size and it all goes. So as you can see, I can make the fonts go really, really small, which at the moment, that's no good for you as attendees. So I can easily put it back to what we're wanting to make that easier, as well as with the dark theme. Normally, I like working in the dark theme, but I'll just change this to make it nice and simple for everybody. And we'll go to the light theme. So therefore, everybody's able to nice and easily see what we're doing on the screen. So if this is the first time that you're seeing Azure Data Studio, that's fine. When you install it, it's easy to install. Go to your browser of choice and just go Azure Data Studio, download, and away you go. Some of you may or may not be aware that when you do a download of the later versions of Management Studio, Azure Data Studio is also included in that download for you. Now, I mentioned about extensions. And because GitHub Copilot is no different, for us to do that, we just come to our extensions tab, and you can see I've got a number of extensions already installed, but for this one, I only need GitHub Copilot. By clicking on that, we can get some information and of what is GitHub Copilot. So you're able to read a whole lot more. Because I've already got this installed, the easiest way for you to know what whether it is working or not, because you can toggle GitHub Copilot on and off. But if we come down here to the bottom right, and you can see the little icon, and it looks like just like our little person up in our logo, and we can see that GitHub Copilot is active, and I could turn that off, but I'm not going to because we want to use that throughout the session today. So once we've got that installed, we're good to go. Now, I'll just close that down again, and we won't keep you up. Now, to make life easier, I'm actually using a notebook inside of Azure Data Studio because with what we're going to be starting off, using T-SQL, so we can see here that I'm connected to SQL and I'm connected to Wide World Importers database, and I'm running this on SQL Server 2022. And that's where I did mention at the start that this is a demo database, and so some of the responses that we will get back are going to be required, or is what you can see if you do a search on your favorite browser. So we mentioned about downloading the extension. You do need to have Azure Data Studio version 1.44 or higher for this to work, which should be no problems at all for everybody working with it. Our Copilot extension, which we've just gone through, I mentioned about the Copilot account, and yes, we do need to have an internet connection for this to work, okay, because what that is going to do when we're working inside of our code, it is going out and getting some of the recommendations from that publicly available information that is out there, and it is not, as I mentioned, it is not connecting to your database. So to start off, we've got a query window. Now, how you want to go about using GitHub Copilot is that you need to give it some sort of a prompt. Now, that's where it's a little bit different to IntelliSense, in that if we just started typing, so if I just go select, we can see that that was propping up, and it could have completed that just by me going select tab. Okay, that's your IntelliSense side of things. And we can see, because I've hit enter here, it's gone and read this comment, and it's creating this statement saying select star from sales.customer categories. So if we were to just hit tab, we've now got our statement based on what we've put in the comments. Now, one of the downsides at the moment is that any statement that we do choose, it always puts, and I don't know why, but it always puts these characters on, and we just need to delete those to then allow it to work. So with this is just a simple statement, and we're able to run. Okay, so we've just gone and hit our Wide World Importers database. Nice and simple. This is where I was saying that this is a great learning tool, specifically for new people coming along into the data platform and wanting to learn, or you've got business people who kind of know the data but don't know how they could get it out. This is a great learning tool for them to be able to use that. So with that, we can take it a little bit further, and we can say, okay, well, we want to get everything, but we want it for a particular type. Now, I'm being very specific in my comments, and I'm doing that on purpose to get the results that we want. There is no set way that you need to fill out the comments on what you're looking for, but I wanted to be able to easily show you what is it able to do. And so we're able to see straight away, it's now creating our predicate and putting our where condition. And so we can run that and we get a single row. Fantastic. Well, what if we want to have specific columns that we know about, and we want them ordered in a certain way? Okay, so once again, you're just increasing what you're putting into the comments to give what you're wanting. So at the moment, we are keeping it quite simple. So we're having our two columns from our customer categories, and we've got it where we're saying we've got 3 types of categories, and we've got our order by. So nice and quickly, with very limited keystrokes, we're able to get that information and give us our basic queries back. Okay, we're able to give it a whole lot more, and it will do exactly the same. Okay. We want to learn how to join 2 tables together. So we're saying, give me a statement to display from 2 tables. Now, yes, I'm specifically telling it what to join it on, because if we didn't, if these columns, actually, no, I'm not telling it what to join on. I'm saying we only want it for the computer store. So if we were to have a look at that one, so we've got our 2 categories, or our customer name and our category name. Where are we coming from? It's given us a table with an alias telling us to join. What are we joining on? These 2 tables. This may be correct, okay, because it's gone out and pulled this from that public information. Bearing in mind, this is, as I mentioned, this is not going and hitting your database. So we've got our where condition, and once again, we've got our order by, and we've got our statement, which we're able to execute and run. So it's given us all of that information very, very quickly. And this is where you can become more productive with that. So if we wanted to take it a little bit further and you're wanting to learn about some new function, okay? Now this is one, and we had a lot of discussion around this one, because the type of function that we're using is very specific on what it needs, but you might not know what that looks like. Okay, so if you're like me and you're typing, sorry, I'll stop there. So Henrik, sorry, didn't get how you started the notebook and got the Copilot suggestions after installing. Can you repeat? Sure, I can do that. What I had done, so I pre-created a notebook. If you're new to Azure Data Studio, notebooks are a way that you can have text and code inside of the notebook. And so I pre-created that with and just entered as a cell with code, and then you can see this is just like if we were connecting to an instance of SQL Server, connecting to our database, and we say new query. It's just that we can have multiple inside of the single workbook. Okay. To get GitHub Copilot installed, we come to our extension, we come to GitHub Copilot. Mine says uninstall because it's already installed. Yours would say install, and away you go. Does that answer your question, Henrik, on how you get started with that, as well as you need to have your GitHub Copilot account? Because the first time, and good question, because I didn't bring it up, when you install it, it will ask you to log in to your GitHub Copilot account. Okay, and so therefore it will have those details so that inside of Azure Data Studio, so that it's able to know, hey, I'm using GitHub Copilot. Then to just get our query. So we've got our comments on what we're after. All I'm doing is I'm hitting enter, and we can see that it is starting to give us information that we are wanting. We select it, we go to the next line, and it's giving us our information. And we can see here, so giving us entire code blocks. By hitting tab, that then accepts this is the code block. Then what we're in a little bit's time, I'll show you how you're able to toggle between those, because you may get multiple recommendations, or we can even go even further and get the entire code block with multiple recommendations. But we can see that it's pulled our information. So we've got our first value. It's on our order date, which we said that we wanted to do it on our order date. And it's gone and put an alias against that. And it's using the petition by, what are we ordering it? And we're giving it a column alias. Okay, so each time for you to, when you hit enter and then to accept, you're just hitting tab and away we go. And it's got all of our joins, and we've got our where condition, and we've got our order by. Okay, so by executing that, it gives us all of the information that we're after. Okay, but it's a learning guide on, I got it, enter and tab, yes, but we'll take that a little bit further. So what we're able to do, so once again, we're just having I'm just trying to take you through and show you as we're going through and getting a little bit more complex on what we're chasing. I want a window function. Okay, now I'm not giving it any other information other than that. I want a window function as a row number. What am I wanting to join on, and what are we asking for that? So we can see from our results that it's given us. We've got a sum of the extended price. We've got a count of our invoices. We've got a number of invoices. Now, I did tell it I wanted those. Okay, so it is giving us what I've asked it for. I just may not know what that looks like. But if I go to the end, we can see here that it's created. Here's our window function on our row number, and we've given it that column name of row number. Okay, so if you just had heard of this thing called window functions and you weren't quite sure, we've been able to create that for us without even having to go out and go looking at what else is needed. We go through our joins. We've got our group by, and we've got our order by. Advice. We have a quick look. Oh, that's unfortunate. So Evaristo is not able to join. Have you restarted?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I will look into that, Warwick.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we can run that, and we've got our results, and it gives us all of the information. We've got our row numbers, which is what we're wanting to do. Now, pivots. You might not use it all the time, but you may have heard of this thing, and we want to pivot our data or unpivot our data. And so on here, I'm saying I want to pivot. I want to have a pivot table to return. Now, unfortunately for this one, because of the way that pivots work, we do have to know a little bit about the values that we're going to be pivoting on so that we can get that information. So if I take us through, so we've got everything. Oh, this is our information that we're going to then be using for that pivot. Okay, so we've got our source table. We're now pivoting on that. Let's bring this up so you can see. Okay, and so we've created our pivot table, and that's going to pivot this information based on our source information, and then display that pivot information. What I want to show you a little bit different to that. I'll take that away and we start again. So I'll hit that once. Now you'll see that I've put up here in the comments that if we use the Alt and the open square bracket, I'll come down here. So I'll hit enter, and that's given us, we haven't accepted the select invoice, accounts person ID, and the quantity. With the mouse, you can see here that it's brought up and it's got 3 options for us to be able to choose from. Okay, so I can either click here on the arrows to take us through, or from here by going Alt, open brackets, it's allowing me to cycle through those, or if you go the close bracket, it goes back the other way. So if there are multiples, you're easily able to toggle through those to find what it is that meets your requirements. Okay. A CTE. So this was more about that we're just taking that a little bit further in how do we create a CTE, nice and simple. Well, it might not be simple because if you've never used a CTE, and we're joining our table back to our CTE. So inside of a couple of keystrokes, we've been able to create our CTE. So this is where I've just been going. As we progress through, we're just seeing more and more on what it's able to do to teach us something new in what we've already know about, which we'll have a look on the next 2 workbooks, or we're wanting to learn a new feature that might be in 2022, for example. You may have heard of this thing, you're not quite sure. GitHub Copilot is going to allow you to easily assist and play with that to give you what you're wanting. So Gavin's asking, do multiple layers of CTE make it difficult to decode SQL logic? Is that a question around CTEs specifically, Gavin, or if GitHub Copilot can cater for multiple layers of CTEs? Because we can have a play. Okay, so the question from Gavin is, can we create multiple CTEs? Well, let's have a go. So if we change that, we'll just statement to return as CTE. If we go statement to return sales categories as CTE2. Let's just have a quick look at, we'll just change it around, so bear with me. So if we run that category name, I didn't include it, so we'll just do this. If we go, so we've got 8 rows. So give me those 8 rows. Category name. Let's say supermarket. So using or Okay, let's see, what does that give us? So hopefully this creates our first one. Look at that. There's our second one. Come on. So while it's gone and created our second CTE, it hasn't then picked up the additional parts down that we put into our information. Okay, so that could be that I haven't quite put it in properly, or it doesn't know what that would look like, and this is where okay, so you want to say join CTE 2-star. Okay, so you want to use join 2-star. Yeah, so this is a really good example of where it can go wrong and not actually give you what you're wanting. Okay. However, what you can do to resolve that is specifically majority of you in your environments, you are going to have table names, column names, etc., which may not be known in the public domain. So where I mentioned that GitHub Copilot is contextually aware. So at the moment, when I'm running this, it's aware of these statements and the code that I've got in all of these cell blocks inside of this workbook, as well as we can see that I've got 2 other notebooks open, and it's aware of those. So what you can do is you can have, you might be working on multiple tables. So you could script those out, have the DDL, so the schema definition of those tables, and you could have them open in separate tabs. So for example, we could have in here, we could have a SQL schema script. It doesn't know, it's no access to the data, but when the GitHub Copilot is reading your comments to try and determine what am I going to be doing, it's able to take that context of what you've placed into that file to be able to provide recommendations, one about the column names, about your table names, etc., to assist in the outcome that you get for the statement that you are trying to write. The other thing, as you are working in your code, if you're working in a really, really big stored procedure, for example, you've got a lot of context, and as you're working through, it will also pick up context of what you've previously got in that stored procedure to provide you options. So for example, recently I was working in, and I know we haven't touched on PowerShell, we'll touch on it very, very shortly, but I was working in PowerShell, creating a new script, and while I declared a number of variables and with their being initialized, and I was trying to get information and do some testing to display what that looks like, do one line, then all of a sudden the next one, it's already giving me what it thinks I want to have based on the context of what I've got in that PowerShell code. So this next part, So we've gone through how to write some T-SQL, and we've gone from a very basic select star, which none of us use, from a single table to joining tables to using window functions to using CTEs. Yes, we had a bit of a play with CTEs, and Justin, that's quite okay, because people are wanting to see, can we do this? And you can see that part was completely unscripted, everybody. We just off the cuff by a question that we do some playing with that. So Gavin, can it analyze existing SQL query and recommend performance improvements to speed up? So you would have to script that out so that you've got the code in a open window, so that it's not actually going to go and interrogate your database. So because it's not interrogating your database, it may, you would also have to have the tables that are used for that stored procedure. You would have to have the DDL scripted out, sitting in open windows inside of Azure Data Studio. So therefore, GitHub Copilot is able to see, I don't know, you may have 10 tables being accessed inside of that single stored procedure with multiple joins, etc. So they would all need to be, the schema for those would need to be in place. And, you know, do you have any indexes that are already created? They would need to be there, because it could, if you didn't have any of that information about the indexes on the tables, then it may recommend an index that already exists because it doesn't have the context and it's not going and interrogating your stored procedure. Does that make sense? So, okay, good. So we can see here that we're just taking it to a little bit further, in that we're going to create a table. What am I wanting? I'm wanting some columns. I'm giving it some types, saying that I want a primary key and I want it to be clustered on the user ID, and I want a non-clustered index on the competition date, and I want to include some columns. So no, we don't want to return a table. Thank you. It's just, yes, we'll have that. Here's our create table. Boom, we've got our table, we've got our clustered index, we've got our non-clustered index, and it's created that index for us. Okay, so nice and quick. It's given us that information, and we've gone and created that table. Now, this is where I'm talking about the context, because we're saying, give me a stored procedure to populate the scoreboard table. Well, it doesn't know about that because we've just created it in our database, but because we've got it in this file, it is in that context, so it will be able to know all of the columns, etc. for that. So if we, here's our create stored procedure, we're passing in a number of parameters into our stored procedure, and there's our very basic insert statement. Now, we could probably put in, if we were to say try catch block to catch any errors. And our stored procedure. And look at that, it's gone and put our try catch around our stored procedure. Can it analyze existing SQL query and recommend a performance? Okay, that's all right. We've spoken about that one. So I can execute that, and it's gone and created that stored procedure. We may not could it validate if competition name is in a subset? So Rob, you're meaning that inside of this stored procedure that we're just creating, you're saying that the competition name, so that obviously if the parameter being passed in is in a subset of values that's already been populated, possibly. Given at the moment, so we could go, so if competition name is equal to daily, then do not insert, for example. Let's see how that goes. Come on. Yeah, stored procedure. So there we go. So I gave it a little bit more contextual information around that, and it's built out that stored procedure on what we're wanting to do. So we can then execute that. We've now created our stored procedure. Table valued functions. You might not use table valued functions on a regular basis, and you forget how to do that. So we're able to create our function. What is it giving us? We're giving us a table. And we're returning the customer ID. And away we go. So we've been able to, so turning pseudocode into actual code. I've done that specifically, Darren, on what I've put in the comments, okay? You can play with that. Because I wanted to do this for a demo and staying close to time to be able to go, here's what it's going to produce, okay? So there is no hard and fast rules about what you put into those comments. It's about what works for you, what you're trying to achieve on how you're able to get the outcomes on what you're looking for. And then this is just my cleanup where I'm able to say, okay, go and drop those. So that's taken us through our T-SQL side of things. Now, PowerShell, keeping this very, very simple. If you haven't already started playing with PowerShell, what you will need another extension, okay? And if I come to the extensions and we'll see here, so I've already got the PowerShell extension installed, so therefore I have access to all of the PowerShell goodness. And whether I'm running this inside of a workbook, so you can see here that my kernel for the workbook is that I'm running PowerShell, or I can run PowerShell direct. I can run PowerShell direct in the terminal window inside of Azure Data Studio. Therefore, I don't need to step out to PowerShell ISE. Okay, so so I just want to write some PowerShell code to connect to my SQL Server 2022 instance and create one of the statements that we just looked at running our straight T-SQL, but we want to do it from PowerShell. Now we can see that I've hit enter, and like before, it gave us the initial prompt. Okay, so at this point, if we were to then hit Control Enter, you'll see that over on the right-hand side, this is now opening up a new GitHub Copilot window, and you'll see that it's now returned 10 solutions. And so for this to occur, this is where it's going out to the internet and it's finding what it thinks may meet the requirements on what we're trying to achieve. Okay, so what have we asked for? Said, well, we've got some variables. We want to connect to our server instance of SQL 2022, our wide world importers. So I want to create a connection string to that instance. I want to set the start time prior to executing the query, execute to loop through all of the databases, give us the end time and the duration. And so you can see here that it's populating some parameters. I'll scroll over. We can see that it's creating our connection string on what we're wanting to achieve, setting our start date. It's getting our database. And if we scroll across, using that connect string, and it's saying, give me the names from the sys databases, end time, and output the duration. That might not be what we're wanting to achieve, given that we said loop through all databases and get the name of the database displayed in the output. So depending on what you're wanting to achieve, this is where these 10 solutions, you can scroll down. It has different recommendations for you on how you might be able to achieve what you're trying to achieve. Some of these might not work at all. And that's the downside to the Copilot, in that it may not be optimal in all of the suggestions for you to be able to use. And yes, so Rob has said no suggestions to use DBA tools. So no, it hasn't included any of those on what we're trying to achieve, because I guess that would come down to, you know, has somebody actually done something simple like that to use database tools to just connect to an instance and give you back the database names? Okay, if it's not going to find anything in the public arena around that specifically, then no, it's not going to bring those back. So it is all dependent as to what you're wanting to achieve. And so then you're then able to just copy straight from, if this is the right one that you want to use, we can copy that straight into our cell, and we can say execute that, and this may or may not work. We'll just see. And look at that. It's given us a list of our databases. It's given us our start time, end time, and our duration. So we've been able to easily create some PowerShell to go and do our T-SQL job for us. So I've got about 5 minutes left. I won't run the second one, but same thing in PowerShell. I want to create the function, same as what we did. What I do want to quickly show you, so from a Python point of view, and we'll just get back to the full screen. So with Python, if you are using Python in here, there are a couple of prerequisites that you will need. So for example, PyODBC, pandas, to do what you need to do. So we can see here that I'm connected to Python 3. Over the side here, we can see our manage packages. This gives us a list of what we've currently got installed. And so if I scroll down quickly, there's pandas, and there's our PyODBC. If there's something that you need to add in, you can easily go add, do your search for that package, install that package. And then you're up and away for what you're wanting to achieve from a Python point of view. So if I just hit enter, so we get our import PyADBC, and this is actually I've done this a couple of times, but this is my first and only statement that I've written in Python. So if there's anybody in the audience that does know Python, don't hold that against me. This is just purely to show you what is GitHub Copilot and how I can learn to say, give me something in Python to achieve what I'm wanting to do. And if I execute that, there's our output. I've been easily able to write some Python code. It's very simple Python code, but it just shows you what GitHub Copilot can do for you working inside of here. Now, I have only mentioned about 3 languages, being T-SQL, Python, and PowerShell. That's not all you can do. If there is an extension, then you can use that, and GitHub Copilot will work for you. So for in here, you might be wanting to work with MySQL. Okay, so you put the MySQL extension in, and away you go. You might need to have PostgreSQL. You install the PostgreSQL extension, and GitHub Copilot will work for you. Or if you're unlucky, you may need to do the Oracle extension. But it gives you, so out of off the bat, there's 6 different languages that we're able to get assistance from GitHub Copilot inside of Azure Data Studio. So with that, what have we covered off over the last 58 minutes at this point in time? Well, we've covered off what is GitHub Copilot. It's a AI paired programmer to assist you in being able to write code with recommendations, entire code blocks. Sorry, Darren. That was tongue-in-cheek when I said if you're unlucky enough to work with Oracle. We've had a look at how do we get GitHub Copilot. Well, we need the extension inside of Azure Data Studio. We need a GitHub Copilot account. As I mentioned, that is different to you having a GitHub account. Okay, and we went through how we're able to start and use GitHub Copilot inside of Azure Data Studio for T-SQL, PowerShell, Python, and then I showed you 3 other extensions which you can do. Okay, if the language is there available for us, then we're able to use that GitHub Copilot to assist us, to make our lives easier, for us to be more productive, or to go and learn new technologies. So